He took my ideas, my trust, and my name. But tonight, I took everything back, without lifting a finger. The rain had a way of finding her, like memory. It slid down the tall glass panels of her corner office in fine silver threads, blurring the skyline of Portsmouth Bay, the city that never fully slept and never quite woke. From the 37th floor of Vanguard Dynamics, the world looked smaller, quieter, easier to control. And yet, Luciana Blake, executive creative director, hadn't felt in control for months. She leaned against the edge of her desk, her reflection fractured in the dark glass. The city lights below flickered in and out like dying stars. Her phone buzzed once, insistent, a message from Daniel. Dinner tonight? The restaurant by the marina. 8 p.m. Don't be late this time. No emojis. No warmth. Just that clipped tone he always used when pretending everything was normal. Luciana exhaled slowly. She closed the phone, staring at her own faint reflection in the screen. Once, Daniel's messages had made her smile. Once, his voice had been the first she wanted to hear after late nights of pitching impossible ideas and surviving impossible people. But now, every word from him came edged with the unspoken, the distance, the polite detachment, the quiet cruelty of someone who had already decided to let go long before saying it out loud. She moved toward the glass, arms crossed, watching the storm gather over the sea. Portsmouth Bay stretched endlessly, a ribbon of steel-gray waves and scattered lights from moored yachts. The water always reminded her of transition. It was here she had started again 5 years ago after leaving London in pieces. It was here she'd built herself back into someone untouchable. Or so she'd told herself. Luciana? The soft knock pulled her back. Rhea Donovan, her assistant, peeked in, bright, efficient, too kind for the corporate world. Board wants your final input on the Kruger pitch before tomorrow's meeting, she said, stepping in. Do you want me to stay and go over it with you? Luciana shook her head.
No, Rhea.
Go home. It's late. Rhea hesitated. You sure? You look like you haven't slept. Luciana gave her a small, practiced smile. That's part of the job description. When the door clicked shut, Luciana sank into her chair. On her desk lay the project she'd poured months into, a campaign that could change her career's trajectory again. Vanguard Dynamics wasn't just any company, it was Daniel's world. He had brought her into it years ago, when everything between them was still untainted by ambition and quiet resentment. Back then, he was her mentor, her partner, her escape. Now he was the reason her chest felt hollow when she walked these halls. Her eyes moved to the photo frame on the far edge of her desk, one she should have discarded long ago. The two of them, at a gala, bathed in golden light, hands intertwined, eyes alive with something she could barely recognize anymore. She turned the frame face down. Outside, thunder cracked against the horizon. By the time Luciana left the building, the rain had eased into a fine mist. Her heels clicked against the marble of the lobby, echoing in the empty space. The security guard nodded politely as she passed. The city smelled of wet asphalt and salt. She drove along the coastal road, headlights catching the fog curling off the water. Every turn toward the marina felt like stepping closer to a chapter she didn't want to reread. The restaurant loomed ahead, azure, all glass and understated opulence, the kind of place Daniel liked, expensive enough to look effortless. She parked, fixed her coat, and caught her reflection in the window before walking in.
Calm.
Controlled. Impeccably dressed. The woman Daniel once admired for her poise. The woman he now treated like a stranger occupied familiar air. Inside, the low hum of conversation and the soft rhythm of jazz blurred around her. Daniel was already there, at their usual corner table by the window, nursing a glass of scotch. His dark suit fit him like memory, crisp, immaculate, detached. Luciana, he greeted, his tone polite, almost rehearsed. Daniel, she replied, setting her clutch down. A waiter appeared instantly. Still the Malbec, Ms. Blake? She nodded, her eyes never leaving Daniel's. The waiter disappeared, leaving behind the fragile silence of two people who once knew each other too well. Daniel's gaze flicked to her left hand, bare. No jewelry, no commitment. He looked away. You've been distant, he said, voice low. Luciana tilted her head slightly. You noticed. He exhaled through a faint smile, the kind meant to disarm. You've always had a sharp tongue. Comes with sharp memory. He studied her. Luciana, don't do this tonight. Do what? She asked lightly. Pretend. He leaned back, eyes narrowing. You're still angry. I'm still observant, she said, her voice soft but steady. The wine arrived, breaking the tension for a breath. She took a sip, its warmth steadying her pulse. I heard about the board reshuffle, Daniel said finally. You're in the running for executive partner. That's impressive. Her lips curved faintly. Did you expect otherwise? His silence answered for him. Luciana leaned forward slightly. I built half the firm's creative assets from the ground up, Daniel. You know that. I know, he said. I also know how politics works here, and how ambition blinds people. There it was, the subtle accusation, the edge beneath civility. Luciana smiled, faintly. Funny. I learned that from you. For a moment, his composure slipped. He looked at her like he was seeing the version of her he once loved, and the version he helped destroy. Outside, lightning flared over the sea. The reflection flickered across the window between them like a ghost passing through glass. Daniel's phone buzzed. He glanced at it quickly, face tightening before he placed its screen down. Luciana noticed.
Of course she did.
He cleared his throat. It's just work. Of course, she said. But her voice had cooled a degree. For a few beats, the storm outside filled the silence. Then, softly, does she text you often during dinners too? His head snapped up. Luciana. She smiled without humor. You should relax, Daniel. It's not jealousy. It's curiosity. His jaw tightened. I didn't come here for this. No, she said quietly. You came here to make sure I'm still predictable. The conversation was unraveling, and they both knew it. The rain intensified, tapping against the glass like restless fingers. Daniel stared at her for a long moment, then said, You've changed. Good, she replied. It means I'm finally learning. Something in her tone made him pause. Learning what? She met his gaze evenly. That people don't just lie with words. They lie in silence. With convenience. With loyalty that expires the moment it's no longer useful. The air between them thickened with unsaid things, betrayals, ambitions, the quiet ache of something irreparable. Finally, Daniel pushed his chair back slightly. Maybe this was a mistake. Luciana nodded once.
Yes.
But we needed it. He frowned. For closure. Her eyes held his. For clarity. When she left the restaurant, the storm had broken completely, sheets of rain slashing through the lamplight. She walked without running, the wind tugging at her coat, her hair plastered against her cheeks. Behind her, Daniel remained at the table, staring at the empty chair opposite him, phone buzzing again. Luciana didn't look back, because she already knew the message he'd see. She'd scheduled it days ago. Check your inbox, Daniel. I think you'll find the numbers illuminating. The rain drowned her laughter as she disappeared into the night. The storm didn't let up. By the time Luciana reached her apartment overlooking the bay, her coat was soaked through, her hair clinging to her face. She peeled it off, tossed it onto the sofa, and stood for a moment in the dark, watching the city shimmer behind the rain-streaked glass. The skyline blinked like a dying constellation, every light hiding a story of someone pretending to be fine. She kicked off her heels and crossed the room, her steps soft against the hardwood floor. The apartment was minimalist, quiet, and everything was in its place. No photos. No clutter. Just order. The illusion of control she had built after years of chaos. But tonight, the illusion cracked. Luciana poured herself a glass of wine and sat by the window. Her laptop waited on the desk, screen asleep, like something holding its breath. She stared at it for a moment before waking it up. The email she'd scheduled to Daniel, the one she'd hinted about, had already been delivered. And judging by the string of missed calls lighting up her phone, he had seen it.
Good.
She took a slow sip, steadying herself as the waves crashed below. For months, she had suspected what Daniel had done, how he had redirected the creative rights of her campaign, Echelon, to a shell subsidiary under his name. How he'd taken her blueprint, her data, her entire concept, and attached his signature to it. It wasn't just betrayal. It was theft, quiet, calculated, legal theft masked behind charm and boardroom politics. But Luciana Blake wasn't the woman she once was. She had learned that survival wasn't about confrontation. It was about orchestration. The phone rang again. Daniel's name glowed against the dark screen. She let it ring, then ring again. On the fourth attempt, she answered, voice calm, composed. Luciana. His tone was sharp, frantic. What did you send me? You read it, didn't you? Don't play games. Where did you get those files? Those numbers aren't supposed to exist. Oh, they exist, she said softly. You just buried them under too many signatures. He exhaled harshly. You don't understand what you're doing. Daniel, she said almost kindly, I understand exactly what I'm doing. You took what I built. You used my trust, my silence, and my name to fund your promotion. You let me fight your battles while you prepared to erase me. You're overreacting, he said, but his voice wavered. No, she replied. I'm finally reacting. There was a long pause. Then his voice dropped, quieter. Luciana, please. Let's talk. Face to face. Not like this. She smiled faintly. You had that chance at dinner. And she ended the call. The thunder rolled closer, rattling the window panes. Luciana closed her laptop, set down the glass, and exhaled deeply. Her pulse had slowed, but her mind was sharp, calculating, present. She had done what most wouldn't dare. She'd copied the original creative registry files months ago when she first suspected Daniel's betrayal. Tonight, she had released them not to the board, not to the press, but to the company's audit committee through an anonymous channel traced back to no one but the shell account Daniel himself had set up for fraudulent transfers. It was the perfect symmetry. The system he built would expose him. Her plan wasn't revenge. It was true with precision timing. And now all she had to do was wait. The next morning came gray and cold. Luciana walked through the glass doors of Vanguard Dynamics, head high, posture unflinching. The lobby buzzed with murmurs, whispers that broke off when she passed. She didn't need to hear the words. She could feel them. When the elevator doors opened on the executive floor, the atmosphere was different, tighter, sharper. Rhea, her assistant, met her halfway. Luciana, she whispered urgently, the board's in emergency session. There. I know, Luciana said quietly. It's about Daniel. Rhea blinked. You knew. Luciana gave a small, knowing smile. I did. The conference room doors were half open. Inside, voices clashed, anger, confusion, disbelief. Daniel stood near the head of the table, pale and furious, a stack of documents in front of him. When he saw her, his expression flickered between guilt and panic. Luciana, he started, we need to talk. Not now, she said coolly, stepping past him. The board's waiting. Every eye turned toward her as she took her seat. The chairman, a man named Thomas Waverly, cleared his throat. Ms. Blake, he began, it seems we've uncovered significant irregularities linked to Mr. Hales. Daniels, she corrected softly, eyes on her former lover. To Mr. Hales' account, Thomas continued. The data trail leads back to campaign assets filed under your project, Echelon. We're investigating, but your name appears to have been, well, appropriated without consent. Luciana folded her hands on the table, calm. That sounds accurate. Daniel turned toward her, desperate. You think this makes you look innocent? You sent those files, didn't you? You orchestrated this. She met his gaze evenly. I exposed it. There's a difference. Luciana. No, she said quietly, cutting him off. You taught me how power works in this place. You told me once that silence is consent. So I stopped being silent. The room was still. Only the hum of the air conditioner filled the space. Thomas finally spoke. "Mr. Hale, you're suspended pending full review." Daniel's face hardened. He turned toward Luciana, voice trembling with disbelief. "You think you've won? You don't understand what you've started." Luciana rose slowly. "I understand perfectly. You built an empire on stolen ground, Daniel. I just turned on the lights." Outside, the wind had quieted. The storm had passed, leaving the city washed clean. Luciana walked down the marble steps of Vanguard, her reflection following her in the mirrored glass. The sea beyond the skyline shimmered in pale sunlight, calm, endless, untamed. Her phone buzzed once more. A message from an unknown number. "You played this well, Ms. Blake. The board has questions and an offer."
Call me.
She read it twice, then slipped the phone into her coat pocket, her lips curving in a quiet, knowing smile. The world that once broke her was now at her feet, but she wasn't smiling because of victory. She was smiling because, for the first time in years, she felt free. Luciana paused by the waterfront, the air cool and bright against her skin. Somewhere behind her, Daniel's world was collapsing, not because she destroyed him, but because she stopped protecting him. And that, she thought, was the most poetic justice of all. The sea wind tugged at her hair. She closed her eyes and let it. That night, as dusk painted the sky in shades of violet and ash, Luciana stood by her window, watching the lights ripple across the bay. She lifted her glass in quiet solitude, not to victory, but to closure. Then she whispered, almost to herself, "Here's to the truth, and to finally walking away." Her reflection looked back, calm, radiant, unbroken. The storm was gone, but Luciana Blake had become one.